I'm Andrew Moran, Liberty Nation's economics editor.
Very, very rocky.
Death by government.
Drain the swamp.
Hello and welcome to another installment of Liberty Nation's Swamponomics videocast. I'm Andrew Moran, Liberty Nation's economics editor. This week, theater of the absurd, debt ceiling style. Following the Second World War, this type of absurdist fiction depicted human existence as having no meaning or purpose and what happens when communication collapses. This perfectly encapsulates with what is currently happening in Washington, D.C. The federal government is entrenched in a standoff over raising the debt limit. The consensus is that not raising the debt ceiling would have lasting and devastating consequences for the U.S. economy, from a sharp recession to skyrocketing interest rates to millions of job losses. The administration claims that not raising the debt limit will be the fault of the Republicans. However, House GOP leadership has shot back at this assertion, alluding to the legislation that was passed that raised the debt ceiling and returned spending to 2022 levels. But President Joe Biden and his administration contend that this is wrong. How could the U.S. government spend $6.2 trillion instead of nearly $7 trillion? Oh, the humanity! Unfortunately, this essentially summarizes the entire debt ceiling debacle. Democrats cannot fathom the idea of mirroring spending from just 1 year ago, arguing that this would have consequences on a plethora of different fronts. Now, the experts in the nation's capital purport that Republicans can bring up the spending issues outside of the debt ceiling conversation. But what would be the point? Indeed, this is the only time that there is any meaningful conversation surrounding outlays in Washington. Outside of this period, most egregious budgets are rubber-stamped with a few $1 billion trimmed around the edges of the paper. Right now, the White House does not seem to understand where all this spending is leading to. Despite claims that they have lowered the deficit, which has been dashed as an insinuation because any reduction has been the result of COVID spending expiring, all the numbers point to greater deficits in the near and long-term future. Let's take a look at two reports, shall we? The first was the recent Congressional Budget Office update to the budget outlook. The nonpartisan watchdog raised the fiscal year 2023 budget deficit forecast to $1.5 trillion and predicted that the federal deficit would climb to $2.9 trillion by 2033. In addition, cumulative deficits would be more than $20 trillion over the next decade. And of course, this is in addition to interest payments, which are going to be about $1 trillion by the next decade. The next report comes from the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. The organization noted that the 12-month rolling budget deficit is nearly $2 trillion, quote, almost double the 12-month rolling deficit from last summer and also nearly double the deficit immediately before the pandemic. This is a horrific look for President Biden with all his grandstanding about being fiscally responsible. Of course, this is the same president whose budget forecast of the national debt will spike to $50 trillion by 2034. If the US government defaults on the debt, will result in the sky falling. This is what all the experts are saying. Then again, they all said that inflation was transitory and that the banking system is safe and sound. Perhaps former President Donald Trump is right, saying at the CNN panel that maybe it will not be so bad if the federal government defaults. Indeed, there is much uncertainty, but there is one thing certain. The United States is on an unsustainable fiscal path and will not be cured because both sides are unwilling to take a chainsaw to the budget out of fear for their political lives. In the end, Republicans and Democrats will come together at the last minute, strike a deal, proclaim it is a winning plan for taxpayers, and declare victory. You might just need to watch for the pizza boxes to make their way through the halls of Congress to see if a deal has been made. Perhaps a debt ceiling agreement has already been established by the time you watch this video, but you can take solace in the fact that this debate will happen again and again in the next few years. The same doom and gloom and conversations will happen, and nothing will be learned. Rinse, cycle, debt, repeat. That's it for this week. Please read my full Swamponomics column on the pages of LibertyNation.com, where I discuss America's confidence in economic leaders, ballooning federal deficits, and trading the stock market 24/7. Thank you.
Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5. produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone, hosted by Liberty Nation's Lisa K. Donner, joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors, deconstructing leftist narratives, debating the hot topics, and remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe
You only
space.
did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative Five.
I'm Andrew Moran, Liberty Nation's economics editor.
Very, very rocky.
Death by government.
Drain the swamp.